This is a really special talk for me. This is me talking at DEF CON, a little unexpectedly, but I really wanted to talk to you guys because in 5 or 10 years, it's going to be you guys giving the talks here, not me. When I started thinking about what I wanted to talk about at Roots Asylum, it was really basically, what is it that I wish that I knew when I was your age? What were the things that were so painfully true about the world that, man, someone should have just like sat down and told me like, this is what's going on, at least in technology. So that's kind of my goal here today. Let's talk a little bit about how the world really works. There has been a change between the world that I grew up in and the world that all of you are all in. And that is, my God, you could just like get tools for everything. You know, it used to be like kind of like an obscure thing to get the technology, to get the compilers, to get the be able to download whatever you needed to learn from, and it's just not that world anymore. You have it all at your fingertips. The accessibility to college classes is a link away in a web browser, and it didn't used to be that way. If I leave you here with one realization, one piece of awareness, and I'm going to show you just how deep this truth goes. You go to school and a teacher gives you some homework and you do the homework. You get a grade, you know you did good. You get a bad grade, you know you did bad. Eventually, as you go on, you go to college, you get this degree. Everything is set up to make you think that you need permission to be awesome. And I'm gonna tell you right now, you don't need anybody's permission to be awesome. You can just go do stuff. The resources are there, the tools are there, the means are there, and you live in a world right now that is not actually based on people getting permission to make things better, but is based on the fact that people did it was better, and they made fabulously wonderful businesses out of it. Now, what do I mean by that? This internet, this thing that we all use. Everyone thinks that this is how it had to be. People have been trying to build internets ever since the telecommunication technology became possible. And you know what? It took decades. People kept going ahead, seeing what we have now and being like, wow, that is totally doable, but let's change it a bit. Let's have the internet that we all know and love, but we're in charge of it. We're the bosses. We can filter anything. We can change anything. We are
you are moving
everything. And what happens is
you are moving around from sort of one part of the manifold to another part of the manifold. You know, if you were a physicist who did dynamical systems theory, you might think of this as like a heteroclinic cycle where you're moving from one unstable point to the next unstable point, but you're always ultimately coming back to the same attracting set of unstable points. So it's that, you know, non-equilibrium. So we're not at a fixed point. We're not all aspiring, you know, to be at thermodynamic equilibrium. There's an itinerancy and a complexity and a richness to the behavior. But on the other hand, it's a behavior that evinces the same kinds of states, the neighborhood of places in state space, time and time and time again, for the duration of the existence of that particular system or particle or person in question.
Cells.
Cells.
Have you ever been in an institution? Cells.
Cells.
Do they keep you in a cell? Cells.
Cells.
When you're not performing your duties, do they keep you in a little box? Cells.
Cells.
Interlinked.
Interlinked.
What's it like to hold the hand of someone you love? Interlinked.
Interlinked.
Do they teach you how to feel finger to finger? Interlinked.
Interlinked.
Do you long for having your heart interlinked? Interlinked.
Interlinked.
Do you dream about being interlinked?
Interlinked.
What's it like to hold your child in your arms? Interlinked.
Interlinked.
Do you feel that there's a part of you that's missing? Interlinked.
Interlinked.
Within cells, interlinked.
Within cells, interlinked.
Why don't you say that 3 times? Within cells, interlinked.
Within cells, interlinked. Within cells, interlinked. Within cells, interlinked.
everyone kept making internets like that, and they kept going out of business. They really did. France had something that looked entirely like what we call the internet. It was called Minitel. They were the boss of it. It made €1 billion in '98. It made 100 million euros in 2007. They shut it down in 2009. They were the boss of it, and then they were boss of nothing. We had a thing called America Online long before all of your time. And it looked like it was going to be the thing that brought America online. And you know what? What we call the internet wrecked the thing. Because on America Online, someone needed to write permission for everything. And on what we call this internet today, no, you just got to play. You just got to build. Now that didn't mean
and then eventually you start saying stuff to yourself, well, is it, Freud comes along and goes, is it love? No, it's really libido. And, so we try to, or nowadays it's love. No, it's more of a chemical reaction. It's the pheromones and it's this and that. The people have, in other words, what's happened is all the things, I think joy, love, truth, beauty, all these big qualities that used to be so important are all categories that are relationships in time. And I think I think the most evil person on the world would be the person who could get things done just by wanting it done, just by imagining it done, and having someone bring it to them instantly. That is.
it doesn't mean everyone's going to love what you do, that everyone's going to come to your thing, everyone's going to use your technology, but you have the chance, you have the opportunity. It's an open system. This internet is based on openness. Every other of these systems, you had to pay what we'd call a gatekeeper. You had to pay like someone who basically could choose to let you on, and at a whim could take you off.
We're done. You can pick up your bonus.
Is to say they would be the person who could violate time the greatest. And I think we live in a world now where there is so little meaning because we no longer live in time. We live against time. Rather than accept time, that things take a while, we live against time. And so that's why I think that we have so many problems. See what's happened, and if Rick Mocker is right about you see what you know, I think, and adding to this some of the thoughts of Barfield, I think when you look at the past, we don't understand the past because we only see what we know. And in our lifetime, we're both old enough to have seen what we know change radically, but it hasn't changed radically in terms of meaning. It's changed radically to strip the meaning. It's like paint stripper. It's stripping the meaning. So all the
Too much. You want this page changed in China? You have to mess with all of China, all at once. You have to ask for so much you're actually afraid to. It's a design concept. You make it so the only way to mess with the internet is to do the equivalent of dropping nuclear weapons, and they don't want to do that, because that would kind of break everything.
You're linked.
Interlinked.
Within cells interlinked.
Within cells interlinked.
Dreadfully.
Dreadfully.
What's it like to be filled with dread? Dreadfully.
Dreadfully.
Do you like being separated from other people? Distinct.
Distinct.
Dreadfully distinct.
Dreadfully distinct.
Dark.
Dark.
Within cells interlinked.
Within cells interlinked.
Within one stem.
Within one stem.
And dreadfully distinct.
And dreadfully distinct.
Against the dark.
Against the
A
dark.
tall white fountain played.
A tall white fountain played.
That you cannot do with just local computing. You actually have to do lots of message passing. Yeah, and we're talking now about sort of the architectures that computer scientists would use. So it's just that there are certain computations you can do without sort of the kinds of architectures you'd find in computer science that just involve local interactions. But as soon as you have to actually generate virtual worlds or worlds that entail action at distance, you get a different kind of connectivity and a different kind of structure. So
we don't have to do anything. I mean, I won't tell.
I honor the rules, Garvey. You can do whatever you want. Must have been Dorfman's little sister's room or something. Probably keeping it in case she comes back.
She's not coming back. None of them are.
Yeah, probably not. So, how are you doing? You know, like with your mom and all?
Fantastic, Max. Thanks for asking.
Sorry. Come on.
You're not even close to baseline.
Life lived online has not added to the meaning. It has made it more difficult to see the meaning. Or as Paul Virilio, a Catholic thinker who died a couple of years ago, really interesting thinker, he said, every new device we invent for seeing is one more degree to which we can't see.
That there is a game, and it is a fact that each of us is in this game, whether we like it or not. What prisoner wants to admit that they are imprisoned and being treated unfairly? It is good to see beyond the game, to say that there is no such thing as time, and that one should not get caught in the illusions. But the fact still remains. I am here, and I must face what is. This is often difficult to do for one main reason: pain. It is painful to see things as they are. It is painful to connect the dots which shatter the lies. It is painful to carry fear about what the future might bring. So, rather than face the pain, it has always been easier to go into a state of denial, to fall.
No. And as good as it is that there's no permission, it creates half an obligation and half an opportunity. You are all here at one of the world's premier hacking conferences. And I don't know if you know what hacking really is, and I'm going to tell you right now. Our systems are built in layers. They're sort of like pieces that are stacked on top of each other over and over and over until we build up into these amazing constructions that allow us all to communicate and build stuff. Electricity goes into basically milled rock, which we call chips. Chips run a particular language, which we as humans are really bad at speaking, called assembly. These languages are made simpler and simpler and simpler till more and more people can work on them. We end up getting web browsers that allow us to download stuff without having to do any work. It's all layers on layers and layers.
inference. There's certainly a lot of work suggesting that that people with schizophrenia, when they are acutely psychotic, may have difficulties inferring who did that. So assignment of agency. So in the sense that, you know, who willed that? Was it you or me? There may be a slight confusion. So if I say something to myself, I may infer, actually, you said it, you put that thought into my head. So, you know, that's just, you know, a false attribution of agency.
To rebuild her body and her vibe and, you know, all the breastfeeding. So, and then we'll try to crush again, allegedly.
Come on, be respectful. So, what's up with Nick and Amy, huh? Do you mind if I jerk off?
Be my guest.
Do you mind if I jerk off? Do you mind if I jerk off?
You know, like overlooking the garden you built together with like your hands are holding and you're like sipping on something nice. And it's just like, you're like, wow, authentic.
Be my guest.
Like you're watching the sunrise somewhere, you know, like beautiful things will happen. But when you force it, it's fake and gay. Right, your absent spirit makes your love for each other grow. Yeah, and it really shows your bond. It really shows that you can count on each other. It's not just about squirting and rubbing.
Your rationalizations, then you can spot irrationalities in the way you're thinking or behaving and correct for them. So we tell ourselves stories all the time about why we believe a certain thing, why we did a certain thing, about what's going to make us happy, or about what our strengths and weaknesses are. And often those stories are true, but sometimes they're just excuses or rationalizations. Sometimes rationalizations are plainly ridiculous, and if you were paying attention, if you really wanted to notice, you would see that they were clearly false. So for example, I'm really good at coming up with rationalizations for why it's actually a good idea for me to eat some huge portion of some really unhealthy food. So for example, I might
so in that sense, perhaps you could say that is a form of disorganized free will. But certainly the people with schizophrenia that I have treated or worked with in the past, you know, I think they would have a sense of self and you know, a sense of free will, which would be indistinguishable from yours and mine.
You know, I know that we have to wrap up at some point soon, and I wanted to bring this up. I didn't know how, but I'll just tell you quickly. A few months ago, maybe I'll even take.
Those areas have been drilled.
While we wait for his word.
But you're not the chosen brother, Eli. It was Paul who was chosen. As he found me and told me about your land register 4.
Why are you talking
I
about
did what
Paul?
your brother
Don't
couldn't.
say
I
this
broke
to me.
you and I beat you. It was Paul who told me about you. He's the prophet. He's the smart one. He knew what was there and he found me to take it out of the ground. You know what the funny thing is? Listen. I paid him $10,000 cash in hand. Just like that. He has his own company now. Prosperous little business, 3 wells.
But that's still great. You know, intimacy is great. But you're fucking insane if you're like, during the period of when your wife's super pregnant, let's say she has a C-section or something, or like a birth, and she's always clawed at by babies and kids are crying and all that. You're a fucking asshole if you're like, I have to come. You're like, I need it though, baby. I need to come.
into the illusion that our captors are hired to protect us from that pain. One could go beyond their fears, while the juncture is a moment that defines whether one is able to stand alone in what they know is correct, as opposed to being influenced by the crowd. But there are also many factors and circumstances to consider. What if one is a parent with children, or is taking care of someone who is elderly? What if one has a disability of some kind, or is for one reason or the other quite literally unable to separate themselves from the system if push comes to shove? What about these kinds of situations? This question brings one back to the statement of what prisoner wants to admit that they truly are imprisoned and being treated unfairly. It is also the reason that no one can give exacting advice to anyone else about what to do in their particular situation.
Because we put the thing in front of us. You know, there's a difference on the simplest level between using your eyes and putting glasses on or looking through a window. And you can tell there's a difference. You know, the sun hits you differently. You don't feel certain things. You know, when you have glasses, you always kind of have to try to get your forehead grease off of them and whatnot. It's, you know, but the more, you know, we had cameras and we had television and we had film and we had photos, and you know, that's why our lives have become these very strange things where people, I saw this in Alaska, tourism. By the way, I have a really great series coming up called Tourism in Reality. But I would see this where people would come off of a huge floating hotel cruise ship. They would walk, the town I lived in was just majestically surrounded by mountains. They're walking off a fjord into mountains. There's going to be bears. They might have seen whales on the way. And what are they looking at when they walk off the ship? Their phones. And to me, that's
producing $5,000 a week. Stop crying, you sniveling ass. Stop your nonsense. You're just the afterbirth, Eli. No. Slithered out on your mother's filth. No. They should have put you in a glass jar on the mantelpiece. Where were you when Paul was suckling at his mother's teat? Where were you? Who was nursing you, poor Eli? One of Bandit's sows? That land has been had. Nothing you can do about it. It's gone. It's had. If you would.
And every other kind of developer, every other kind of engineer really likes to think of their particular layer. It's what's called information hiding. They don't think about how it's all really working and how it's all really working together. And that is not us. We hackers actually look and see how the system really works. We don't care how it's supposed to work. We try stuff. We see where things might break. We're not fooled by what's called the abstractions, the hidden parts. No, we look across all the systems.
Take this out of the actual clip, but a few months ago, January, February, I woke up in the middle of the night, and then I had a conversation with my wife. It was minor, neutral, wasn't positive or negative. And then as I was going back to sleep, she either said yes or okay, or she could have not said it. But I was in this hypnagogic, almost sleep-like state, and I've never had a panic attack in my life, but for some reason I wasn't sure if she said okay or yes or whatever it was, or if it was in my own head. And then I thought, am I psychotic? Am I getting schizophrenia? I don't know why. It's not like that was a background anxiety of mine before. Maybe it was latent. But then I started to have a panic attack because I didn't want to hear anything. And I felt like I may be able to will myself to hear something by telling myself, don't hear. Then I'm like, well, what would it sound like if I were to hear? Then it's like, no, don't go down there because you may hear a voice. And I don't want to go. I don't want to be crazy. I don't want to be psychotic. A couple of days.
So, I mean, are you gonna choke me or what?
tell myself, well, I really have to eat this huge plate of whatever it is that I just cooked because, well, I have to test the recipe, right? I mean, I have to see whether it worked or not and what I have to change the next time I cook this dish.
Just take this, please, Daniel.
Drainage! Drainage, Eli, you boy. Drain dry. I'm so sorry. If you have a milkshake, and I have a milkshake, and I have a straw, there it is. That's a straw, you see. Watching. And my straw reaches across the room and starts to drink your milkshake. I drink your milkshake.
Where would the freedom be in that? However, individual situations do not preclude one from doing esoteric work. Even in hell, one can still find heaven.
It means when we're trying to break things, we have more and more opportunities because we don't care which layer we break, we'll just break all of them. But it means as people out to fix things, as people out to protect, not everyone in the world is a software developer, but everyone in the world is now affected by software. There's a quote that software is eating the world.